Um, so I'm actually just going to introduce us. So this is the second to last installment in the uh, NB Disability Art Collective Workshop Series that's been funded by Arts NB. Ysabelle's going to be presenting Access Riders. Um, so Ysabelle is a Fredericton-based artist, and I'm sure you can take away your own introduction, Ysabelle. So I'll hand this over to you. And thank you for
Okay.
coming and being here with us, and thank you, Charlie.
Yes, and if anybody needs Charlie to be pinned, you just hover over the little square, and then there's a pin option. Anyway, if you have any trouble with that, please ask Jessica. Okay, I'm Ysabelle. If you see my screen here, this is my website. I'm a visual artist who's visually impaired, and I have chronic pain. And today we're going to talk about access riders. So, what what the heck is that? Yeah. So I have one on my website here. Let's see. So if you go to Meet Ysabelle, there's some documents here like my bio, CV, artist statement, talent resume, long CV, access writer. So these are typical documents that you would see in like an art portfolio. So Jessica's talked about some of these in the other uh, series with this residency, which is great. And access writers is not like a necessary thing; it's an optional thing that you can do. So, so an access writer is essentially like think of your access needs in a document. Okay, so it's a working document, so you can edit it at any time. That's why I have the date on here, last updated this January. And essentially, it's for anybody who identifies as disabled, neurodivergent, and it might benefit kind of laying out and setting out your access requirements into different categories. This is a thing that exists in, especially like in the music industry and the theater industry. They have like these things called tech writers. So these are like the equipment that you need to host a show or the lighting systems or whatever. So companies are in those sectors especially are used to seeing them, and now in the visual arts, this is starting to become more prevalent. And it's something that you can choose to give out to like festivals that you're working with, like anybody that you're working with. Say that you're traveling to do an installation or anything where you think this might benefit you, right? Because it's a document that you create for your benefit. Okay, so yeah. Essentially, if we just kind of go in here, and you can I got a lot of these examples on Google, so there's a bunch of them. If you just put like Access Writer template, there's lots of different examples. The first, actually, I went through all of these, and they all have their pluses and minuses. If you have, say, a particular disability that you don't see kind of represented in these categories, you can kind of put that on there. So it might give you an example. So you could put like access writer template for somebody who has autism, for example, right? Um, because I mean, we might have different needs. So yeah, all right. So you can do that. There's no like, yes, there are templates, but there's no like set way of doing this. Some people have a table of contents. Some people make it more formal. You can put it in the first person, the third person. Doesn't really matter. Um, so I've got like I'm trying to think like when I've done festivals or I've traveled for art shows or done different things with different companies. It's kind of like when you're your own artist, you tend to work with a bunch of different venues, people, and you're going to have to keep repeating yourself on what you need, which can be rather exhausting. I mean, if you're a person with a disability and gone through the school system, I'm sure you're familiar with that, right? Each teacher, you got to kind of explain what you need to do your best in the class, right? And with arts organizations, especially if you're working with a big group, say you might explain your needs to one person, and then on show day, it's a different person. If you have a document, uh, then it can go through multiple people, and then you're sure that like you have the thing like, okay, this is what I need, and it's something you can refer back to. It's something that people can ask questions about. You don't have to disclose anything you don't want to. Like, you don't have to put your disability on the document at all if you don't want to. You don't have to put any medical information. You're just kind of laying out what you need to work best. So, for example, like I said, I don't see very well, and part of that has to do with too much light. So I have a whole section on like I have a section here on like audio description, like seeing small text. I have a section on travel assistance. So if I'm using, especially like air travel, or if I'm going out of province, I will ask for an attendant if I'm going to a festival or whatever, because there's too many there's too many things going on, and for me it's quite helpful to have that, and you can ask for that. Um, Lighting, yeah. So like I was saying, I have this whole section on lighting. I might reorganize this by importance. And I think I might, because like I said, it's a working document. I did this a few years ago, but I keep updating it. Be like, yeah, I didn't mention this, or this isn't clear. So it's always nice to have somebody look over it and do it with you, somebody who knows you well. I could put emergency contacts. I put like technology, uh, other assistants, whatever. So if you want, we could do like I could choose somebody and we could go over theirs, and we could kind of how would I say like kind of practice one out if you want. So that's something we could do. Uh, but yeah, it's kind of like um, you have to think of different scenarios, right? And different environments. And it's hard to kind of keep track of, like, I have multiple disabilities now. I used to have just one, and it was like, okay, I have my spiel, I tell people, and, sometimes they remember, sometimes they don't. But it depends what I'm doing. And as, I've been doing this for a few years now, uh, you get like at first you're surprised because you're like, oh, I didn't real like when I set up my own exhibition, I didn't realize how much help I actually needed. Because if I'm to put a bunch of photo artworks on the wall, my vision's not great enough to see if they're crooked, if there's smudges on the glass, if there's like the what colors go together, because I don't see colors. Like there's all these things that I didn't even think of. That's like, yeah, I would need help doing this. Like it's a visual medium, visual art form, and I'm visually impaired. Like of course I would need help doing this. But of course, I didn't even know about access riders a few years ago. So it's just helpful, even if you never use it. It's just helpful in your head to be like, right, because as a person like with a disability, it's hard to, well, for me, I should speak for myself. I find it hard to advocate for my own needs, to ask for help, even though, I've been trained as a young kid to do it. But it is difficult, especially if I'm tired, or I don't I'm not feeling very confident that day or whatever. It can be awkward to because things are just assumed a lot of the time. And if it's not kind of stated out, these things can be interpreted as just minor preferences. Like, oh, could you do this? It's like, yeah, they could, but they prefer this. And it's like, yeah, okay, but I have this, condition where if this thing doesn't happen, like this is gonna hurt me, right? And it's an awkward conversation to have over and over. So anyway, um, So yeah, so there's if we look like at different templates, there's hold on. There is one here that has like a lot of categories to it. And some of them even have like questions that you can. Where's my zoom? Okay. So you can fill this out. We scroll down here. You can literally put your own name, uh, date of the document. Like they made a table of contents, right? So definition, accommodation, meetings, rehearsal, quiet space. They got lots of things.
Sorry,
Contract.
Ysabelle, we're still seeing the search.
Oh, sorry. Thank you for telling me. Sorry about that.
No problem.
All right. How do I do this? Share, 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 share. Okay, here we go. And then it's this one. Let me see. Yeah, okay, sorry. Let me just go back. Whoop. So this template, if you just Google, I think it's the very first one from what's it called? Arts Accessibility in the UK. You can download this, and yeah, it has like a cover page. It's very kind of professional looking, like your date, your name, and you can just edit this. Like you can just write your name here. And then it explains like what is an access writer? Because I mean, of course, we live in New Brunswick, and maybe people have not heard of this, right? Um, and they have like a table of contents in theirs, things to consider. But yeah, why don't we? I've been talking a lot. Why don't we open this up a little? There are some messages in the chat that I can't read. So if there's something that's important, if you could read it out, that would be fantastic.
Ysabelle, Yolande asked if you could if it would be possible to put a link to the template in the chat.
Yeah, yeah, I can do that.
Awesome.
Let's go. So wait, if I'm going here, I think it's the very first one. So Access Writer, Open Template, Disability Arts Online. So it's a link to a website, and then you have to go and click on their link because it will open in a document that you download. So that's what it is. And it's at the very bottom. It's called if you scroll down to the bottom, it says Access Writers for Creative Freelance Practitioners. Okay. I'm just gonna put the Disability Arts Online in the chat. Where's the chat? La 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 la. Okay. Oh, and then there's one right here. Okay. Yeah, so
Yolande said thank you.
perfect. Thank you. Yeah, so like I was saying before, especially like if you're doing performance work, there's lots of people involved, right? You got a stage manager, you got the person who preps you before you go on stage. There's the people you have to deal with who do the lights and this and that, and there's so many people involved in your performance that you might not even realize, and having a document like this is really helpful. So yeah, if anybody wants to kind of volunteer to kind of brainstorm something with me, I'd be open to doing that. I know Cass does a lot of performance stuff. If you're into it, you would be a good example because your needs are very different than mine.
I was just about to unmute and say, I'll do it.
Perfect. So you have different things that you do, right?
Yep.
Like you go to the market, that's one of them. You do stand up, improv, and then I feel like there's other things that I'm forgetting.
I don't know. Maybe. I don't know.
Art shows. Yeah. So
don't
Yes.
know.
So if we were to start with the market, for example, you would
Have
need
fun.
a few things, right?
Yep.
Like we open up. Actually, why don't we do that? Which document am I sharing here? Okay. If we, ooh, sorry, it's not in my thing. Here we go.
Hope I don't have any food on my face. I just ate supper.
That's all right. Okay, so if we were to do this, go through it here. So, emergency contacts is something that we could put, but since we're in a recording, you might not want to do that right here. So we can skip that particular part. Let me just turn this off because it's distracting me immensely. All right, and plus I want to see you guys, folks. But yeah, okay, so if you were to go, say, do a performance, stand up, you would need stage access, right? So it's not necessarily a ramp. It could be an elevator. It could be you would need an accessible bathroom.
Strong people.
Sorry, strong people to lift you up.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Especially when you come to St. John Lake Pass.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, you could have different options too. Like you could have your basic kind of needs. You're like, okay, I need these things. And then you could have like preferences, and you could even have like um kind of your extravagant things that you want, right? And
Yeah.
you're like, I can handle this. I do my best work doing this. And if you really want to, spoil me, you could do this, right? So you could give the person options that they could choose. You never know.
Yeah.
They might surprise you.
I
Right?
like that.
Yeah. Because I mean, celebrities do this all the time, right? If we were to invite, I don't know, Taylor Swift to the Playhouse, God forbid,
How's
she would have some kind of document saying, I need Evian water and this, and I need to make sure that um, these fog machines come out at this particular time. You know what I mean? She has all these things that she needs to do, and
ridiculous?
yeah, but it's like our needs are not ridiculous. Our needs are important to us, and if they're on paper, it makes it more. I don't know. People value paper in this culture. Like if it's written down, it's like, oh, okay, it's something I can reference. It's something I can see. It's legitimate. It's something we can talk about. They can't say like, oh, we had this conversation. You remember? And they'd be like, no. It's like, well, we're looking at this document right now, right?
Right
So
here.
yeah. So if you're doing a traveling show, like you did with what was it called, the Spirit Project?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that means you travel to several different venues. I forget where, like Moncton, Halifax, Fredericton, right? You travel different places. So it's kind of like, okay, what do we need for you to be your best? We need to make sure that all these venues are accessible. And it's like you almost need somebody to go in there and do a run to make sure they actually are, right? Because
Yeah. Exactly.
it's like, okay, sure, yes, they have a ramp, but then the snow's not plowed on it, right?
Yeah. Yep.
And they have an accessible washroom, but they don't have a grab bar, so it's not technically an
Yep.
accessible washroom. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Or I think we went to the market, and it's like, okay, if they have these big tables, I'll need assistance. I'll need somebody to help me move this table, get this set up, put the sign or my stuff
Yep.
aligned. Right.
Yep.
So that's an example.
Exactly.
If you were to give a monologue on stage, you would need to make sure the microphone is at your height.
Yeah. Yep.
There's no podium that's higher than you.
Exactly. Yeah.
And it's sad. Like you really have to kind of outline all this stuff.
I had to I had to do something. There was a podium involved, and I ended up just sitting beside it.
Sitting
The
beside, yeah,
delivering speech.
yeah. And it's like, and it's like if it's all outlined, I mean, people might just browse through the document and go, oh, okay, yes, we haven't considered this. We didn't think about this, right?
Yeah.
And if you're
There's a
doing
lot people don't consider until they see it.
exactly, yeah. And probably as you discover, there's a lot of people, especially like in theater and stuff, there's a lot of people involved doing a lot of different things.
Yeah. Oh,
So
yeah.
for you to explain every time, it's like, oh my God, okay.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
And it's like, okay, you're also going to need a cab or a transportation to be provided for you to go to the venue. You're going to need, like, what else? Like different like we did when we did our residency at the Cass and I worked together last summer, and we did like a dance residency, and we didn't even think about, but we needed like more space because
Yeah.
the space was fairly big, but it wasn't enough to kind of move around safely. There was like a long ledge, but then the ledge kind of dropped, not very much, but it dropped like maybe a foot or two. So it's like, if you're dancing and you fall off the ledge, like that's no good. There was a parking lot, but the parking lot was like crooked. There was like dips and stuff, so no good.
Yeah.
We needed a dance floor, and that wasn't provided. Yeah, so that's something, for example, to consider in this kind of application, right? Let me think. What else do we need? There might be different scenarios too, right? Like if you're, this has happened to me a few times. So when I ask for an attendant, because I traveled to Vancouver, I've traveled to Halifax for my art and stuff. So I asked for an attendant, but then they were like, okay, so is the attendant sleeping in the same room with you? Or do we want one bed, two beds? These are important little details. Yeah. Because I mean, yes, for me, my attendant is my partner, but that's not always the case. And in some cases, it won't be because he'll be unavailable and I'll ask somebody else to do it. Right. So, and there was one instance where there was two attendants because I needed a drive to go to the thing. Like there wasn't public transportation to bring both of us there. So it's like we needed a driver, an attendant, and then me. So yeah, it can get a little complicated. But yeah, you could put in your access writer like an invitation to talk to you, to discuss these needs ahead of time before you come into the space, before you have to give your presentation or whatever art form that you're doing, right? And you can also like make requests like for me, I may not need the same thing that Cass would need, but it's like I want to make sure I have the things Cass would need because if I'm performing, I want her to show up. I want other people to show up. I want my space to be accessible, right? So you could have like what's it called? An annex or whatever, like a separate page with like these are the things that these are the preferred venues that I want to work with, right? Like say Solo Chicken might have a policy. Solo Chicken is like a theater
Production
organization.
company.
Yeah, that's the word. Production company. And they really value accessibility in their programming. So they might have a policy saying like, hey, we only work with theaters that have, these things, and these sort of access needs because we care about our staff, our people, right? So like for me, I have chronic pain, so to travel like really long distances, I might need to break that up, right? Because if I'm sitting in a car for over 4 hours, like it's gonna hurt. So say if I were going to Halifax or Fredericton, that's at least 6 hours, right? So I would probably break it up, go to Moncton, stay overnight, break it up, go to, for example. And then, I might need, and think about too, like on your best days versus your worst days, because that happens too. I've definitely done performances on my worst days, and it was like, man, would I have ever wished I would have advocated for the minimum stuff I need on the worst day, right? Because it's gonna be a struggle for literally no reason. So yeah, does anybody have any questions for me? Anything you want to talk about? I feel like I talk a lot. Some water. I'll wait.
Oh, Yolanda has their hand up.
Yeah. Okay. Great.
Yeah, I didn't know if I should just jump in or whatnot. Can you hear me
Of
well?
course. Yes.
Cool. I don't have a specific question. I'm just thinking about access needs in general. There's a residency that I participated in last year online, and it turned into a very kind of inaccessible situation. So
No.
just asked, because I'm hard of hearing, I asked for there
Yes.
to be captions as
Yeah.
well as visual cues. And that's really all I asked for. And the first day of class ended up being very overwhelming because the instructor, it was supposed to be an hour-long class. She was cramming everything into 10 minutes. She wanted us to make really complex decisions on the timing of class, what we would do. She wasn't repeating herself. There were no visual cues. I was in tears afterward.
Oh.
And I talked to the residency, and it turned into a big thing where they tried to kick me out. It was
Oh
very
boy.
strange. And afterward, I got through the week. I refused to leave without them putting in writing. It's because they wouldn't meet my access needs that I had told them about, because it turned out that they're like, but I don't know. I think they thought it was optional or didn't fully understand them. So a week after it all ended, I spent a number of days filling out this long feedback form outlining everything exactly. And I found when they accepted me into the residency, they had actually said in writing that they could meet those access needs. And I had stated both of them. And I'm like, if I'd found that on day one, I think things would have been very different. But so I love hearing you talking about the access writer as something put in print that I can work on
Mm-hmm.
at my leisure. I can have maybe, not great experiences, but I can then go add, oh, I also need, people to wear earbuds or something with good quality sound, which came up a few weeks ago that I'm like, I didn't think about that. So it's just this constant kind of discovery. But yeah, I don't know, like in terms of what happened last summer, would you say like if I were to do that all over again, would I be like, here's a whole document, even though I'm scared of overwhelming people, but like here's a whole document with everything, or just how to phrase those in a way that they understand and then there's not conflict later. I'm still trying to.
Yeah, because it's like, okay, it's one of the like I'm sorry that happened, first of all. And I feel you, like, man. And it's like I also have this feeling like I just asked for these two things. I just want these two things, and they can't get the two things right. But it's like, okay. But then there's more than just the two things, right? There's all these other little things that you don't even think about. And it's like, oh, okay, right. We need to articulate what these things are, like the background noise on people on Zoom, and the slides, like sometimes too it's like I know people with like processing issues. Like my dad, he has tinnitus, yeah, so he has the ringing in the ear. And it's, when that ringing is happening, he can't concentrate, like he gone, you know what I mean? So for
Mhm.
him, if we were to make access requirements, right? Well, he would need a recording so he can watch it again, right? For example, he would need probably like a certain time of the day. Make sure that he's in a sound, kind of a quiet environment where he's listening to the thing. Ability to take breaks. That's another thing. A lot of people put that in their thing if they're presenting for, like, if this was a 2-hour lecture, like, we'd probably have a break in the middle, right? If anybody wants a break, let me know. You're like, hey, stop it. You're overloading me with content, Ysabelle. Right? Or if I'm speaking too fast for the interpretation, let me know. But yeah, it's like, because these are all little assumptions that we forget about, right? So yeah, I would kind of write it all out for you. Just, like, what in the most ideal situation, I would have this. In the bare minimum situation, I would have this, right? On my worst days, it would look like this. On my best days, it would look like this, right? And then just kind of like look, and then, look at the templates, look at what other people like, talk to somebody who knows you like really well and be like, what do you think? Am I forgetting something? Like for example, I if I it's silly, but if I were to go like on a hike, I need like assistance, right? Like if it's uneven ground, if there's all this thing, and I don't think about that. I'm like, oh, whatever, I'll just bring these hiking poles, I'm good. It's like, no, I'm not good. If it's like really slippery and everybody's going really fast, it's like, no, I'm gonna be trailing behind. And it's like, the group should know this, yeah. Or at least one person that can kind of help me out can do that. So yeah, it's maybe you needed interpretation at that thing. Maybe you needed um more. Sometimes too, it's like the I did this program in New Brunswick called Catapult, which I think Jessica also did. It's like an arts accelerator program, and it's just way too fast. Like they did every weekend for 2 months. It was like Friday night and then Saturday all day for 2 straight months. And it was a lot of information. You had homework. It was like no breaks. And they just kind of, we didn't have a workbook. We didn't, like, there was no, like, if you missed something, too bad. you know? So now, after my feedback and other people's feedback, they're stretching it out. So now it's only one Saturday a week and it's 4 months instead of 2. They have like a workbook with all the examples. They're recording their sessions. People can, so it's like, okay, like, because people design things how they want it. But when it comes to people with disabilities, like, unfortunately, we're the outliers, right? We're not the typical person. So it's like, okay. And, people don't see these things. They don't, unless they are experiencing themselves. You don't even think about it, right? And even like I was talking about my dad earlier, he has the tinnitus and stuff, and it's like, my mom knows, but she forgets all the time. We'll go to a really loud restaurant, and then she's like, I wonder why he's upset. I'm like, because he's overwhelmed, right? He can't hear anything, and he's probably got pain, right? So yeah, I've even had people like request accommodations, like at an interview, saying like, I need the questions in advance. I need time to think about it. I need you think like a break in between. That's okay to ask for these things, right? Because you both have the same goal of, like, we want you at your best. They don't know what your best is. They don't know what you need for that. You want to be comfortable and do what's needed, and surpass their expectations. And they also want that. So it's not like you're fighting, but that's what it feels like, right? Because you're like, I don't want to be a bother. I just want to ask. Because sometimes it's like, our needs affect other people, right? Like, especially me, like in the classroom, we would have like a really bright classroom. What are they called? Fluorescent lights. All the walls are white. It's a bright sunny day outside. There's no blinds on the windows, so they're like flashing in. And I'm having a headache at the like by midday, going like, oh my God, like, yes, I have glasses on, but it's not enough. Like, I have sunglasses, I mean, but it's not enough. It's like I almost needed a tent to just cover everything. They tried taking out the light bulb or the light fixture just above me. That didn't work. And I remember we had like a substitute teacher or something, and I said, can we lower the blinds or whatever? And then they kind of put it out to the class, like, do we want the blinds open or closed? And everybody was like, open. And I was like, no, like, ah. You know, so it's a whole thing. I see that there's stuff in the chat, but I can't. Jessica, would you mind reading that out?
Yeah, no worries. So I know Yolanda was mentioning when we were talking about different accommodations, they mentioned speaking slowly so Zoom auto captions are accurate. And Shauna had said yes and to mute when not speaking, so I think she's talking about, cutting down on noise so that other people can hear better in the recording and throughout presentations. Shauna had said she would also suggest having a learning assessment done by a psychologist if you are able to. That way it's being told to the school by someone, the school, so they should so basically she's saying like they should respect that, and
Right. Yeah.
100% they should, but that way, like, I think she's also talking about like having that assessment can also unlock more resources for you in kind of academia and other environments as well. So that's cool. And then there's just some conversation and people networking, so that's exciting as well. So
right on. Yeah, it's good, like because, like, I don't know, like, for speaking from my experience, I was the only visually impaired kid in my school at the time. There was a few of them maybe 4 or 5 years ahead of me, but they weren't at my school at the same time. So it's like, I think I'm just weird, right? I have this feel because I've been, I grew up with this, so it's like, oh, I'm just different, right? But it's like, as soon as I meet more people with disabilities and more people with my specific disability, then it's like, oh, I could be asking for a lot more. Oh, it's reasonable for somebody like me to do this. Yeah, okay. Right? And I think it's important to have things like the Disability Art Collective, where we can talk and network and get to know each other, and talk about that, right? Because and one of the things too is like that residency that Yolanda did. Now that they've had her through, and maybe we see other people with disabilities go through, and then eventually, hopefully, they will improve. You know what I mean? The more that, like, you're like, all right, like, as soon as I saw like people at Solo Chicken, like several people with different abilities go, it's like, okay, that's kind of your proof that they're slowly getting more and more accessible, right? Because if you're the first person to show up in a space with a some kind of access need, God forbid, right? So it's sometimes, especially in that instance, the document is important because it's like, oh, okay, we need to take this seriously. Like, it's in pen and paper, and it's the law. They're not allowed to discriminate, and as soon as it's on paper, it's like, oh well, yeah. So yeah, it is a good idea to like Shauna said, to seek outside help, right? Because sometimes your other professionals can have the wording for you, or sometimes you don't like the wording, but that's up to you, right? However you think. I've seen access writers where they kind of give a disability 101 sort of situation, where they're like, it's not my disability that's the problem, it's the environment and the lack of access. Because if I have my needs met, then my disability kind of is irrelevant. It doesn't kind of exist. It's just a physical difference that I have. So this is why we need to talk about it, right? And yeah, we were talking about like different networking things, and I wanted to mention too, after this series, like all this whole series that we're doing, that Jessica has been doing a great job in, hosting these Zoom meetings. She's been making herself available on, I think it's Fridays, to just have an open discussion where you can just chat and talk about these issues in a more private setting if you want. And also, once that's all done in March, I'll be doing a disability lab intensive with the JL Legacy Fund. So it's essentially a mentorship. Okay, I know it's called a lab, and you're like, "What's a lab?" Yeah. So it's going to be like a group mentorship. So right now, there's a form that you can fill out, which I will put in the chat. Not right now, but I will put in the chat. um, where you can apply to be a mentee, and then I can help you with these things one-on-one if you want, and in a group setting. And we can work on other things like how to apply for a grant, how to do your SART CV. We can talk about your art goals, and like let's say you wanted to do a writing residency, like Yolanda, or you wanted to do stand up like Cass or whatever.
Elise,
How do we go about it? Yeah.
Elise has their hand up.
What's going on?
I just want to highlight, you said the jail legacy fund.
The JL Legacy Fund?
Jane LeBlanc.
Jane LeBlanc, yes. Yeah, it's like a memorial fund, and they have actually it's really more simple to apply for that than Arts NB, because Arts NB has a bit more formality to it. And the JL Legacy Fund, they ask like a couple questions, and then you just email, and then poof, your application is done. Okay, and the person in charge of it, Kat LeBlanc, she's makes herself available. Like you can call her, email her, ask her some questions. She will go on Zoom with you and discuss. And I asked her, I said, I was looking at the call for submissions, and it said, just send an email out. And I said, well, what if somebody needed an alternate format? Would you be open to that? And she's like, oh yeah, they could send a video. I'm like, could you put that in the call? you know? But yeah, it's sorry, I got distracted. It got it's important to have these people kind of in your corner to identify the places, because I mean, for me, like as time goes by, I see the progression of how things are becoming more and more accessible, right? Like I'm seeing a lot of these disability justice things happening on Zoom, and I'm seeing a lot of conversation about what are the benefits, what is the disability wisdom, what is our access wisdom, things like, what are they called, access doulas, which is kind of the role Jessica's playing right now, helping me with the chat, right? Like she's helping me read out the chat so I can be having my access needs met, and helping facilitate this discussion, right? So and in the doula can also be like somebody who helps mentor you, like if you're new to the disability community, right? If you weren't born with it, like me, for example, well, one of them anyway, one of the disabilities that I have. They can help you kind of get connected to the community and what have you. So I know a few of you are involved with the New Brunswick Coalition for Persons with Disabilities, and they're doing some advocacy work and things that are really helpful. So you can always get connected to that. And I will send out some links. I think you guys all registered by email. I can do that for you. Okay, so I said I was gonna send something in the chat. What did I say? Oh, link to the link to the JL Legacy Fund, not the JL Legacy Fund. The Jane LeBlanc. Okay. Let's see. So it's I think it's 6 months residency, or 6 months lab. Sorry, it's a lab intensive. So I will be working on some artwork while mentoring. I mean, not exactly at the same time, but in that time period, I should say. So the application is due February 20th, so you still have time. And the actual, it's in the chat. And I'll put the dates here. The actual program time is March 1st to end of July. So just put that in there. It is like a Canva infographic thing, but if you use like read out loud, it should be able to read that out loud for you. If you have any trouble, just let me know. I have the text version somewhere. So yeah, do we have any more questions? Anything else people want to share about their experience or what have you? Anything you want me to go over again? Did I answer all the things?
I will mention quickly as well. We were talking about the legacy fund applications and things like that.
Yep.
If people want to go over application stuff at the community night on Fridays, I know Carly and I have and some other people who've been there have gone over application stuff. So that's something I'm helping with as well. So I'm just kind of putting that resource out there. Like if you want to talk about applications and like we read through them. So we've kind of done like little mini info sessions and little like where I'm just reading the information and going through the different questions and formulating things. So just to mention, that's also available to you guys if you would need that. I see that Yolanda has their hand up.
Yep, sure.
Elise had their hand up before me.
Elise, is this a legacy hand, or do you have another question? Okay, I think it was a legacy hand. Go ahead, Yolanda.
Yeah, I put my question in the chat. I'll read it out.
Okay.
So have you ever gotten pushback on venues or organizations not wanting to meet even your most basic access needs in your access rider? And if so, how did you navigate that situation? If not, how would you maybe in the future?
Great question. Yeah. I have not presented my access rider yet. The people that I've dealt, like I haven't had a new I guess client, if you want lack of a better term, a new performance venue, a new thing. So the people I've been working with, I'm not gonna all of a sudden present this document. I mean, I could. I did talk about it to because I do like accessibility consulting as well. So I did talk about that this is a thing that they might be seeing in their venue because I was hired for Solo Chicken Productions. They're like, how can we help? You know, how can we be more accessible? And I'm like, well, you know, maybe consider that this might be an influx of a thing that people have these documents, right? Because you're working with a cast of people with disabilities, right? And they all have different needs, and there's a lot of them that you have to keep track of. And if you have them all listed there, then that's going to make your job a lot easier, right? Because they have kind of a to-do list to figure out, like, to be able to push for those needs. So yeah, I think usually it's a misunderstanding what happens when I communicate it kind of informally, like without the document. They're not understanding that I'm expressing an access need, and instead of it might just be a preference, or I might not be talking to the right person. I might be talking to a person that's like, oh, they really got it, but then I'm not dealing with that person anymore. Right? It was just kind of the intake person, and then not the other person that I'm really working with at the end of the day. But yeah, I think because it's a live document, there's several iterations of it, right? You keep improving it. You might edit it for different audiences, right? So I might try like a CV, right? You might have some things that are more relevant. Say if I'm doing, I don't know, poetry performance somewhere, versus I'm traveling to Europe to present my artwork. So these are two different things. So yeah, I have seen some workshops on these access writers. I've been to a couple of them, and this question always comes up. And so far, I haven't had a true answer to it. I don't know, but I do know that these is becoming more and more commonplace. And like before, it's like what is it? And now it's like, oh, okay, yes, I've heard of that. Oh, yes, okay. And it's like I've been asked if I had one for an opportunity, and I was like, oh, I'm working on it. So I will be presenting it to them and see how that goes. But I already know them, so I guess it's a different thing, yeah. Because I feel like you might get pushback from people you don't know as well, but it's hard to say, right? Like in New Brunswick, everything's little, everybody knows everybody, versus like, I don't know, a bigger place like Quebec or Toronto or whatever, right? Where there's tons of people and it's hard to keep track of all of them. So, yeah. I wish I had a better answer. Yep.
Cass has their hand up.
Yep.
And after Cass, Carly also has their hand up. So.
Okay, great.
I was just going to say that the last link you put in the chat, it led me to a not found page.
Oh, did I put?
Yeah. I don't know if it's just me or.
Let's see. Let me just see. Boop, boop, boop. What's the last thing I put in there? Oh, nope.
I think
Oh, the
Cass...
the Jane Legacy, right? Okay, sorry. Let me just find the post on Facebook. I think that has the more, like the whole thing, instead of just part of the information. So if I go Jane LeBlanc, Founded and Legacy Fund. Okay. Sorry, I'm very bad at multitasking, apparently. Oh, okay. Let's go. Oh, I found it. So it's from January 12th. And I will paste that. So it has the explanation of what the project is, and then there's a couple links in there. So hopefully that will work. Okay. Okay. Any other questions? We're close to the end here.
Carly.
Oh, Carly, yes. Right.
Yeah. And what I'm curious about how I'd be able to also use that to, like, when I eventually do get, like, the book launch and all that jazz.
Yeah.
Like, someday I do want to get published. Once I get over that imposter syndrome hemorrhoid. Kind of a blunt, a nice girl way to say it, that royal pain in the caboose.
Right. So maybe things to think about is like, maybe you want to do a book launch over Zoom. Maybe you want an attendant with you when you're going to the ones in person.
Yeah, like for instance, the transportation logistics.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a lot to think about.
Yeah, especially during the winter time, since a lot of communities tend to get caught with their proverbial pants down when it comes to when there's snow.
Yeah.
Dramatically unprepared.
Yes, the unplowed sidewalks is definitely a barrier that that I face as well.
I think most people would be like preaching to the choir.
Yeah. And the what is it? The construction barriers when they don't announce where the construction is, and you're like, oh wow, okay, rerouted, gotta go somewhere else. Right?
Yeah. Since I do find sometimes their communication skills probably uh, they know as much of what the right hand is doing as the left hand, as someone just coming off of anesthetic knows what's going on around them. It's a nice way to say doesn't know to board a punch.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's good. Like you do a lot of writing, right? So it
Yeah,
makes sense that you wouldn't submit your first draft, right? So
right, of course.
you would do several drafts of this document, and I have done several drafts of this document. And the first time I did it, I'm like, oh, I'm done. Good, I'm good. And then I looked it over, and I'm like, no, I didn't mention like these 15 other things.
Yeah, I understand what you mean.
All right,
It's just the
so
first draft is getting all the material together.
because it's like, okay, it's like, who am I presenting this to? Do they know anything about, like, I know a bunch of stuff about disability justice, and I've read some books, and I've gone to some workshops, but I can't assume that of whoever I'm showing this document to.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe if they're a disability arts festival or something, I might be able to get away with that, but just a regular gallery, probably not, right? So you might have to include these links and things like that, like recommended reading, whatever. Like I've seen these access documents be 15 pages long. Okay, there's like, you know, different things that they could point to, like, oh, here's a list of this if you're interested. There's this that, like, it's like, here's, they almost do like a how to make your venue more accessible, which is, I guess, free labor. I wouldn't go that far, but you could, especially if you're the first person in the to do, and you could also refuse, right? Like, this is another thing. Like, if you don't want to go through the hassle of going through an opportunity and having your access needs not being taken seriously and having a, you know, bad time, say like a residency or something, then if they don't kind of respond to your access writer, maybe that's a clue. You know what I mean? That might be a hint that maybe they're not ready for you yet. Maybe they get more and more of these and they're like, oh, we should probably start paying attention, right? So I think as a community, if we all kind of do this, it might work out. I don't know.
Yeah, the more ammunition we have, the better, kind of thing.
Yeah. It's something that I heard about a few years ago, but I mean, it's existed a long time, so, or maybe like 10 years or so. So
Cool.
we'll see.
Oh, I see that Cass has their hand up.
Yep.
Yeah. I was just wondering if this form would apply to me, but just you were talking to me about a residency somewhere and is like staying there for a couple weeks.
Yeah, I was mentioning the Introspect residency through ArtsLink, and that's in St. Andrews for 2 weeks. I can put the link in the chat for that. Definitely,
Okay.
I think an access writer is a great idea to send along. I think Ysabelle can speak to that. I'm gonna go find that link.
Yeah, because I went to the info session to Introspect this week.
Oh, shoot, I missed it.
They have a recording. They have a recording. You can ask for that. I probably have an email somewhere that I can poke around and send to you. They did say that the venue itself is accessible, but the fact that it's like a nature residency, you're going to be outside. So there's also that consideration, right?
Yeah.
So it might not be good to go on the terrain.
Yeah.
Right, because you'd be at the botanical gardens and I forget where else, but there's a lot of uneven ground and things. So it's like, well, if you can organize yourself to do it inside, or if you can find a strategy for you to be safe to do it outside for what needs to be done. Yeah, like this might be a conversation. Like a lot of these art programs will have somebody in charge, like an admin person that you can talk to and be like, listen, I need to know, like, what is this like? Is it worth it for me to come to this thing? Right?
Do
Even before.
you happen to know if they'll be like, do you think they'd be very lenient on letting you have somebody come with you?
Well, that's an access request, right? So if you, I think you can. I think they said if you are a team of um artists, so let's say you were working like a group of 3 on something,
Yeah,
and but you're gonna share the fee, so you're all getting paid less. But if you're just wanting a person to assist you
yeah,
as an attendant, then that should be fine because you're going to be sharing a room. But if you don't want that, there might be an exception to be made, right? Because it is an access request. So I can't see why they would refuse that. It's a
yeah,
reasonable accommodation.
yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's like, huh, I get carried away at these things. I talk really fast and I have all this information. I'm like, bah! So yeah. But yeah, I encourage you all to apply for the mentorship if you're interested, and I can further help you do these things because, like I said, like if you do choose to do this, you're probably going to do several drafts. You probably want to show it to a few people and be like, "What do you think? How is this worded? How do you think this is? How would you receive this?" Right? So yeah, it's kind of like plain language. Try not to use acronyms or just make it really simple. Be like, this is what's required, this is what I need. You don't need to go why, you don't need to expound on, you don't need to justify anything. It's just what is it that you need in simple terms, right? And if you can organize it in different categories, well then that probably helps too, right? So yeah, thank you so much for coming. And if there's any, I'm going to stick around a bit. So if there's any lingering questions or anything you guys want to talk about, I will be around for the next little while.
Um, Thank you for coming, Ysabelle, and thank you, Charlie, for doing our ASL. I will mention we have a few things upcoming. So our next presentation is in February on the 22nd. So that'll be at the same time. It's always at 7 o'clock. That's actually going to be our last presentation with this residency that I'm doing. And it's going to be about disability justice, art for social change. So I'm very excited. Another thing that we have going on is community night. We have that every week. So that's every Friday at 7 o'clock. So anyone is welcome to come. We talk about art, we talk about art calls. It's definitely a fun time. Sometimes we're talking about different projects that we're doing. I've been sewing the past week, doing a textile painting, and Carly knows I've been trying to not poke myself with pins. So always an adventure. We also have an event that I'm going to be putting some information out this week. It's a virtual artist talk. So I figured in lieu of a gallery, because galleries are not always accessible and the cost of shipping work is sometimes significant, and all of us live in different places. Like I know some of us we're all from different cities, so I figured, wouldn't it be cool if there was just a space for people to pitch their work and talk about their artwork? So that's what this is, and that's going to be on the 28th of February, so that's a Friday at 7 o'clock. So if any of you would like to be involved with that, I'm going to be putting information out probably Monday on the finer details of that. Basically, what is happening is that people will have a presentation of their work, so 3 to 5 pieces, and you can talk about yourself and your work for about 5 to 7 minutes. And yeah, so if you'd like to be involved with that, please feel free to reach out, and I will make sure that you are involved. And I'll be sending information out through the Disability Art Collective's Facebook page, and I'm also planning a newsletter. So,
Is Charlie gonna be there or
yes,
ASL? Yeah, perfect.
yeah, Charlie's gonna be there. So we're happy to have Charlie, and yeah, so that's us for tonight, guys. Do you have anything else that we want to talk about? Do you have any closing remarks or questions? I'm just gonna check the chat really quickly. How can we sign up for the newsletter? I think, how can we sign up for the newsletter?
You need to create it first.
I need to create it. I have the mail list. I do have the mail list.
Yeah.
If you,
I think everybody that's on the call should be on the mail list from
okay.
Yeah.
If not,
email.
If not, Yolanda, I will find you through Facebook, and I'll grab an email from you, and I'll put you on the newsletter. So everything will be okay. But all the information will be on Facebook, regardless, and it'll be through newsletter, and I can reach out to you personally if that's something you're interested in. So it's all good. So yeah, that should be us for tonight. I just want to say thank you again, Ysabelle, for doing this. This was fabulous. I learned so much, and thank you, Charlie, for our ASL. And I just want to say also thank you to Arts NB for funding this, because without them, we would not be able to do our work. So we appreciate it a lot. So yeah, I'm gonna stop our recording.